Like I mentioned, just to refresh, in this session, what we're going to do is we're going to look a little bit more at screen recording your lesson content. Why might you want to do that? And then we're going to look at a couple of really easy, accessible tools for doing so. And that's going to be through Microsoft PowerPoint and ScreencastOMatic. Depending obviously on the type of videos you're thinking about making for your e-learning classrooms, there are some other tools that might be more applicable. These ones primarily are going to focus in on recording your screen, adding personal audio narration from your end, and in one of the cases, adding your webcam as well. So you can do kind of like what we're doing now, where we're sharing content, but still have that kind of visual teacher presence. You may not be comfortable doing that all the time. You may not need to do that all the time. But as we go through, this is going to be kind of a learning experience, like I mentioned. So you'll kind of find when you want to have that and when you don't, which is part of why we're going to look at two options. So apart from the obvious reason that we still want students to be learning in this kind of tumultuous time, there's a number of ways that video recorded content can actually enhance our online teaching and learning. So one of those things is that it can be more efficient. So obviously reading is important and we want to encourage our students to do that all the time. But in some cases, long passages of text in either a textbook or an article or something can really be condensed down into its main digestible parts and communicated a little bit more succinctly through a short video that students can watch. And then this also carries the added benefit that students can replay these over and over again, making the information a little bit more accessible, but also giving them kind of the ability to rewatch it as they need to. Another reason why you might want to record some video content is being able to narrate over top of the content that you're showing gives you the ability to tell stories to students. You could theoretically just give students with a set of slides that they can review asynchronously, but that really misses a lot of that personal element. And there's some things that don't necessarily fit naturally on a slide. So things like personal anecdotes or other little related tidbits of information that maybe you didn't consider when you were making your slide content, but come to be relevant as students are learning. Another reason is that, again, kind of tied to the one we just mentioned, a lot of things aren't easily conveyed through text. So things like emotion, behavior, and cultural narratives don't fit nicely within a block of text on your screen. So being able to provide that audio narration for students and video in some cases, if you're comfortable, can help really make that a little bit more personal and can kind of reestablish that connection that maybe we have with students in our physical classrooms, but we might be lacking at this point now. One of the places where this might come into play that I was thinking of when I was reading through the Padlet responses that you all came up with was in the assessment process. So as a graduate student at Ontario Tech, one of the things that my instructors have actually done, as we do learn primarily online, is during assessment, they've actually had our document open and they've screen recorded going through, say it's an essay or something. So they've screen recorded kind of going through, if there were particular passages that they really, really liked, they were able to record and talk to me about them, say what they liked, say what they didn't like, provide suggestions for improvement. And even though you can do the same thing just by sending a text file, that really helped understand and kind of solidify. And it also gives you a little bit of a boost too, if you're the student. Sometimes feedback can come off abrupt in text. I'm sure we've all had that issue where maybe we've been texting or emailing with someone and you're like, what did they really mean by that? Because you can't tell tone. But when you're speaking or you have a face where you have expression, it adds a little bit more of that personal touch and clarifies some of those comments that we might make. So that's one way that video can be used really practically, aside from just your lesson content. So as Margie and Jeanette touched on in the introduction, one of the reasons you might want to do some video recording for your classes is to create a flipped classroom type setup. So just to refresh, a flipped classroom is basically flipping when the direct instruction is happening. So as opposed to coming together in class, say, and learning the instruction then and maybe having just a short time to practice together, a flipped classroom kind of respins it, gives students the material to learn prior to coming together. And then that sort of face-to-face or online synchronous time can be spent, working together, working with the teacher, getting direct feedback in the moment, and really delving in on that practical hands-on stuff, kind of like we're doing now. And then after class, they can then take those experiences and combine it with what they learned prior to class to hopefully solidify their understanding a little bit more. It's basically making more efficient use of your synchronous time together by not having to, as Margie mentioned, go over the basics and get everybody up to speed in class. And not only is this something that you could theoretically choose to do right now, but this is something that some teachers, as Jeanette mentioned, she's done it in the past, but teachers of other levels, you may choose to do once instruction returns to face-to-face. It is admittedly a little bit of work at the beginning to prepare these additional resources, but once you've got them, if you have the luxury of teaching the same division or the same subject, you may choose to keep sort of a flipped setup and do this when we're back face-to-face. So that face-to-face instruction time actually is just hands-on problem solving, collaboration between students, and so on. So that's just one reason you may want to use video. As Margie mentioned, there are some pros and cons to flipped classroom. I won't read over all of these, of course, but some, for instance, obviously a positive is that there's more one-on-one time with the teacher spent in class, whether that's face-to-face or online. It gives students the opportunity to learn and relearn, if need be, things at their own pace because they have the material and they can go back and go back and go back. And this is especially relevant for our youngers, but it might be applicable to this division too, is that this sort of thing can promote parental involvement. So rather than students having to have that conversation with their parents, where parents are asking, oh, what did you learn today? And students are like, I don't know. They actually have those videos there. And if they're accessible to parents as well on whatever learning platform, they can even go in and see and scan and see what students are learning. So it can really help that way. Obviously, there are some pros, the main one being a flipped classroom approach really does increase the workload initially, especially if you are creating your own content for students prior to flipping. So as Margie mentioned, in that flipped session we're doing on Thursday, she created those videos. It's possible that you may be able to find some that are already made depending on what you're doing, but more likely you'll have to create some sort of content. So in the beginning, it does result in an increased workload, but if you're able to reuse that, it saves you some time in the end. And then there's also the question of the digital divide and whether, as Jeanette mentioned, your resources that you're giving students are accessible. So if students don't have a high-powered computer with a graphics card, can they still access the videos that you're giving them or what have you? So there's some things to consider, but it is one approach that you can choose to use in doing video content. So that being said, let's get right into the tools. So the first one we're going to look at is Microsoft PowerPoint. Part of the reason we chose this tool is it's something that most people are going to be familiar with and will have access to as part of the Office 365 suite. Typically, I think a lot of school boards are going with that sort of thing right now. So hopefully you have access because I'm going to get you actually in and trying it. It's also one of the easiest ways to record your screen and record audio narration on top, as you don't need any additional programs or plugins. You can just do it straight in. And while PowerPoint's screen recording feature is probably intended to record slides specifically, you can minimize and capture something else. So we'll play with that a little bit later. The one downside I will say to using PowerPoint as a screen recording feature is that it doesn't have innate webcam support. So like ScreencastOMatic that we're going to look at after this, there's not an easy way to have your webcam visible when you're recording your screen. Depending on your webcam software, there are ways sometimes that you can pin your webcam on top of your layer and then you can just screen record that way. But it really depends on what you're using. If it's just an onboard laptop webcam, you may not be able to do that. So if you're really, really gung-ho about using your webcam, PowerPoint might not be the one you want to use all the time. So I have this on the slides primarily for people's later reference. Working with Office. Yeah, well, that'll be a good experiment that we can see. So hopefully we'll find out. Let us know if it doesn't. If not, we can just go through together and chat. So I'm going to, rather than have you look at this sort of diagram, I'm going to actually jump right into PowerPoint now to show you exactly how you go about doing this. So the easiest way to do this that I find, and I'm one of those people that if I'm not organized, it drives me absolutely crazy. So if I'm recording a set of slides, what I like to do, and you see that I'm just kind of stealing the slideshow from today, new copy, so it won't get messed up. The easiest way to go ahead and do this in PowerPoint is you just create a new slide. And I like to do this right at the end of the presentation because it's there and then I can hide it when I don't want it anymore. So once you've created this new slide that's going to act as a placeholder for your video file, all you have to do to start recording is go up to Insert in your top toolbar here and over to Screen Recording on the far, far right. So when you click that, for some reason it disappeared everything, so that's fun. I'm just going to tab back into there. So when you click on that, it starts up this little toolbar in the top of your screen here. And it gives you a couple of options. So you can choose whether or not you want to record your mouse pointer, which if you're doing some sort of walkthrough or recording something with your students, that can be really helpful, and whether or not you want to record audio at that time. It also gives you the option here where you can select exactly what you want to record. So you can click and drag over the whole screen if you want to record your entire screen. Maybe you don't need that, so you can change your mind and you say, no, I only want to flip through my slide deck here. And then you click and select what you would like to record. And you can see that the area around it has been grayed out. So that part isn't getting recorded to this video file. The only thing that's getting recorded is this kind of not low contrast bit here in the middle. So when you're ready and you've selected your area, you can luckily still interact with everything. I'm going to go back to the beginning. Yeah, when you're ready to record, all you have to do is just hit the record button. So it'll give you a countdown. And then once that countdown goes away, we are recording. So I didn't check my audio settings before I did that. I do have 2 microphones plugged in, so hopefully it's recording from this one. But what you can do is you can just scroll through your slides. If you have some practical examples to share with students, you can do that. So you can go ahead and just click through a slide to see how it's going to look. Click through a slide. And then when you are finished recording, whatever it is you're wanting to record, if you remembered that set of hotkeys at the beginning, you can go ahead and hit that. I absolutely don't. So you can just hover your mouse pointer up at the top of the screen and that fun little toolbar will drop down again. And you can pause if maybe you lost a thought and you need to think about it again. Or if you're done, you can just stop altogether. And what we see now is at the end on that slide placeholder that we made, it's dropped in a video. We selected it to be the full size of the slide, so it's showing up as the full size of the slide, but I'm going to resize it just so we can see better here. So this is our little video. I really hope you didn't get any of that audio because it was really awkward. But as we can see here, there's a little bit of a video. It shows where you're scrolling through the slides. It can show my mouse pointer there. So easy peasy. So now you've got a video of whatever content you wanted to show students and it's embedded in a slide. So what if you want to take that out of there and put it somewhere else? Super easy. All you have to do is right click on the video, go down to here where it says Save Media As, and then you can pick where you want to save this. So it's saving as a media file. It doesn't tell you exactly what the file type is, but we'll just go ahead and save this somewhere that's not a mess, hopefully. We'll just save it to the desktop. So theoretically, now I just have to find it here, pardon my desktop. So it's saved as media 1 to my desktop. So that should have saved just as a straight up video file. Yeah, it's an MP4 file. So that file type is compatible with pretty much anywhere you want to upload it. You can add that into Google Classroom. You can upload that straight up to YouTube if you have a class YouTube. You should be able to embed that in most other learning management systems. So you have that file now. So if you don't need this slide anymore, you can go ahead and either hide it straight up or you can just get rid of it altogether. We still have that file, which is essentially what we need to share with our students. So we don't need that slide. That was just there as a holder. So I'm going to pause for a second there and check in and see how are we feeling about that. Does anyone have any questions immediately at the get-go?
Hi, Jennifer. Can you hear me? It's Katina.
Yeah, I can, Katina.
Okay, so would you do the entire PowerPoint presentation or would you do a few slides? I'm just thinking file size. Have you had best practice with that?
It honestly depends on a lot of things on it, actually. So how long is it going to be? That's something I always consider is how long is your video going to be? I tend not to when I'm recording for students. I really tend to keep videos no longer than 10 minutes, certainly, and even closer to 5, ideally. I primarily work with a younger division, so older students can handle a little bit more, but I mean, how easy is it to just tune out of a video, right?
Yep.
So from that perspective, at least, I like to record smaller chunks of video and break lessons down into kind of smaller, manageable pieces, and then intersperse those with questions, practical activities, that sort of thing throughout. File size definitely is an issue. PowerPoint doesn't record, that I've noticed, in exceptionally high definition. So I don't think it's going to give you a 1080p file, if that resonates with anyone. So the file size is okay. But depending on your home infrastructure, your own internet, your upload speed, these sorts of things can take a while to transfer. So even for your own purposes, it may be good to, again, keep the videos relatively short. So that one was about 30 seconds, and it's a pretty small file. It's only 5 megs. So we can extrapolate and say that if it was 10 minutes, it would be it would be like 100 megs. So that's a pretty small file. Again, it's going to be pretty low definition. But PowerPoint, especially if you don't have exceptionally good internet, you can pretty well rest assured that you're not going to run into file size issues, at least.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Vic, question answered. Not available in 2010. Unsure about 2013, 2016, 2019. Yeah, I think you do need the 365 subscription for it to work. I don't remember seeing it in previous editions, but I kind of made that same jump from 2010 to whatever this version is now. And yeah, absolutely agree. Check-in questions on a Google form. There are even some really cool tools out there. I'll have to get back to you on the names, but you can embed videos and have things on top. Actually, I think Camtasia is a really awesome software where you can pop up questions and things, but we can get to that later. But yeah, really good idea. Short videos. Yep, Nearpod, I'm pretty sure you can do that too. There's a ton of different options for that. So if there aren't any other questions immediately, for those of you who are able to, I'd like to give you the opportunity to try this. So if you've got PowerPoint, what I would like you to do is to open it up, I guess, and see if it'll give you that option. But yeah, take a couple minutes. We'll say maybe like 5 to 10 at most, because we want to be able to check out ScreencastOMatic. But find some sort of slideshow that you've used in the past and see if you can go through those steps of creating a short video with narration. Or if you want to step it up a bit, I didn't show you how to do this, but see if you can minimize your PowerPoint slide and screen record something else. So going through maybe a Twitter feed or a classroom website or whatever, just to kind of get your hands on PowerPoint and yeah, see if you can create that sort of video, primarily so we can work through any challenges, any inspirations together, and kind of really take this and run with it. So yeah, take maybe I'll stop you in maybe like 7 minutes and see how you're feeling, and see if you can get that open, and then we'll share. If you are going to record anything, make sure to have your mic muted in this Google Meet room before you do that. Otherwise, we'll hear your lovely recording there. Diana, I don't have a lot of experience with Nearpod. I believe I've seen it used primarily in the past for very rudimentary virtual reality stuff. I think that's one of the apps that we've used for that. But Katina, I'm pretty sure, I don't want to put her on the spot, but maybe she might be able to explain a little bit about Nearpod for you.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, it's basic, like it's a lot like PowerPoint, but you can put assessments in there, you can put video. It's a multimedia piece. It's really cool that way. I'll see, like, well, Nearpod, they've got some great tutorials out there. If you just search on Google, there's some great things, but I don't want to say everybody's using it, but you know what I mean. It's definitely a new tool that's out there that's outside of PowerPoint right now. Similar, but just a little bit more in terms of assessment, how you can be using it.
That's a good question. Is it free? I think it's got pricing schemes, doesn't it, if I recall correctly?
I use the free stuff, but you know, it only takes you so far, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that'll be the case for a lot of things too. For instance, later when we look at Screencast-O-Matic, it has free stuff, but obviously you can get a premium subscription and get a few more options. Definitely maybe worth checking out. Like Katina mentioned, I have seen a lot of people start using it a little bit more often. PowerPoint is really, it's kind of very much like the business world sort of thing. We kind of brought it into this because most people have used it before and it's pretty familiar, but it definitely does lack a lot of features for the edu field that something like Nearpod has and has built in for you. But yeah, I'm going to let you guys tinker and play for a few more minutes, and I'll check in a couple and we can chat and see if we had any luck. Fabulous. Thank you, Katina. See, this is why I love these sorts of sessions is, no one's going to know everything, but everyone knows something and we can share that and work together. So I'd be curious to hear, either verbally or in text, for those of you who are able to kind of play around with it, did you run into any roadblocks? Was it pretty easy for you? Checking out Nearpod. Oh yeah, perfect. Or if you're in kind of the situation that Vic's in, have you started to think about any other maybe alternatives to this that are maybe just as sort of accessible and user friendly? Or did you maybe have a strike of inspiration where somewhere you might use this? I'd like to hear, your feedback, and I'm sure others in the chat might benefit from it as well.
Jennifer, it's Katina again. I have a quick question. What's the difference between the dictate versus the record? Like, when would you use the dictate tool versus the record tool?
So from what I remember, the dictate tool is primarily if you want to just add audio specifically into your PowerPoint slide.
Oh, I see. So it's like a speech to text. Is that right?
That's what I thought, but I just tried it now and it didn't do anything. I haven't had a chance to use it. I know it's part of Microsoft's accessibility suite. So it was added somewhat recently.
I wonder if that's the one that helps. Like, I know at some point with the accessibility, they've got the ribbon with the other language like you can have up there.
Yes.
I wonder if that's what it is.
And I believe it is. I think that's if you were to, say, present it live and you were to, add something here, then it would get, well, let me try this. Let's see. View. Present. I typically, to be honest, I don't often use PowerPoint for presentation purposes.
Yeah. Agreed.
So it's new to me. I hear it doing something, but I'm not sure. I see you can see my slide area here. It's switched on me. Let me see. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that feature is part of the accessibility suite and not so much about adding information into the slides.
Okay.
I know there is another way to, let me see if I think it's just insert. So if you didn't want to record a video and you did want to, for instance, just give your students a PowerPoint presentation, but still had your audio narration, you can also under insert, besides screen recording, there's insert audio. So you can insert just little clips of audio onto each slide. that I think you have the option to set whether it starts automatically when students are viewing the slideshow or if you want them to have to activate it. But that way it sort of gets around the video bit and still gives them kind of your voice and your narration as well. So that is another option.
Yeah, and then they don't have to sort of forward, rewind, etc. But I bet you it's a big file if you
I
do
think
that.
it does embed a little bit higher. Yeah, and
Okay.
I like the ability to be able to forward and rewind. The one thing I've found with doing, because I've had some classmates who have used this audio feature in the past on PowerPoint, is it's not, you can't scrub the file. So if you already know this chunk on, say, I don't know, I'm trying to remember back to high school, but say conics or something like that, and you already know this and you just want to scrub through it, you can't really do that with the audio because it's just kind of a little plugin that just plays. You don't have
Okay.
control over it as the student.
Okay, good to know.
So yeah, different bits of things for different reasons that you might choose to use it, of course. I'm sure there's ways that's applicable if you're just providing like little short, maybe tidbits of information. Yeah, totally up to you and your contexts.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Did anyone else have any thoughts, maybe anywhere they might see themselves using this? Any challenges you ran into aside from poor Vic and his PowerPoint not working for it? If not, we'll move on to ScreencastOMatic.
Hi, Jennifer. It's Vic.
Hi.
Yeah, unfortunately, that old PowerPoint didn't work. But just in general, using tools like this, I find if we can pre-record a slideshow or something like that, it works very well. I've found in my limited experience for things like worked examples where you want to go through the process, or if it's something procedural and you want to march the students through once before handing the control over to them to let them then try it, perhaps in, again, some sort of question that's posed through another format, where it's an assignment and they come back and they give it back in the day. Ideally, it's faster turnover than that, but I see it working well. I'm a math chemistry person, so I see it working well with a lot of, here's how it works. Now you try it with a different example.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note too, you can walk through it with, your own metacognitive processes. So you can explain, what are you thinking as you go through this process? What things are you noticing? What things are you ignoring? What are the key pieces of information? So being able to add that in as well. I do like the idea of pre-work. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I agree. I agree. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. I always like the idea of pre-recording stuff too, because when we consider that students, and I saw this in my online learning as well, it can be helpful to have some time to formulate your thoughts before you're kind of, say, put on the spot and asked to answer a question. So even for us, for teachers, I think that's useful too. It gives us a way to consolidate our thoughts and our information and how we want to present it by going through this recording bit, because you can pause on each slide if you need to and be like, okay, how do I want to frame this? What do I want to make sure to include? So it can kind of reduce your cognitive load in that sense as well. So we're going to move on to ScreencastOMatic, because I think in about half an hour or so, if I recall correctly, we're rejoining to kind of debrief. I see that Jeanette's in here now, so if that is wrong, please feel free to let me know. But we're going to move on to another tool. And obviously, feel free to keep chatting in the chat with each other about PowerPoint if you still have some ideas, and we can always come back to it later. So ScreencastOMatic, first of all, has anyone had any experience with this? Let me know in the chat if you have. I really like it. It's not something I've used before preparing for this presentation, but I actually really like it, having played with it now. It is a web-based platform. You do have to download a small little program file. I think it was, I want to say it was like 30 something megabytes, or it was very small, 30 or 300, I can't remember. But it was very small. It downloaded in about 15 seconds. But it is a web-based platform for screen recording. They also have an editing software that's web-based as well, which is restricted to the premium accounts. However, with your free account, you do have a 30-day trial of it, so you can test that out and see if you like it. And you can also host videos on their platform. I love Camtasia. Yeah, absolutely. That's actually one of the options I've mentioned at the end for people to check out if they can get access, because that is a fabulous platform. But ScreencastOMatic is pretty light, and if you don't have access to something like Camtasia through your board, which if you do, I highly recommend you check that out. All you have to do is download this small little plugin, and you can work from it straight within your browser. So if you are using something like Google Slides over, say, PowerPoint, or if you want to go through an example on a particular piece of software that maybe students don't have access to, but you still want to be able to show, ScreencastOMatic is fabulous for that. You will see in the bottom of these slides, since you do have them, you can peruse these at your own leisure, that they also have an insanely good tutorial library, and they show you how to do every little tiny thing. So if you're not super comfortable with screen recording or video production, that's a really cool resource for you as well. I've highlighted here that there are multiple account options only to say that the free account has a ton of affordances. There's other platforms like something called Screencastify, which is also good. However, in their free accounts, you're limited to a 5-minute recording max, and it gives you this annoying little counter as you approach that 5-minute mark. So that can be really inhibitive while you're trying to record things. With the free accounts for Screencast-O-Matic, you get up to 15 minutes recording time per video. And you also have access to, a small library of background music if you want to get fancy and add in some, atmosphere to your videos. And honestly, I feel like for most people, the free account that you have access to through Screencast-O-Matic is perfectly fine. And there's not really a need to go above and beyond. But there are options to do that at the solo level as well as the team level if, say, this was something that your school wanted to look into purchasing. And those purchased accounts are actually pretty reasonable for online accounts as far as those go. The one downside I will say to the free account is that it doesn't record computer audio. So although Jeanette mentioned that it's useful if you have a link to something you want students to be able to hear and watch, to be able to send them a link to that. If, say, you're working with a particular piece of software that you wanted to show students that makes audio, it wouldn't record audio from your computer. It'll only record audio through your microphone. So that's kind of the one downside of the free accounts. Oh, and the big one, before we get into it, is that Screencast-O-Matic does let you embed your webcam. So if you do want to have that visual teacher presence, it gives you the option to do that. And it gives you a couple of options. So we'll see that when we jump into it. I also discovered that they have a fabulous browser extension to make it even easier to use if you are using Google Chrome, of course. So let's dive into Screencast-O-Matic to try something else a little different. So when you do go into Screencast-O-Matic, and I'm not sure if I mentioned explicitly, I think I just glossed over it, but you do have to make an account. I just sign up with my school Google account, as I do with everything. It just makes it easier. And you do have to download a small file. But after you've done that, you kind of get dumped onto this screen, which is just your account screen. I don't actually love this screen. There's a better one, but there's not an easy link to go to it. If you do screencastomatic.com/content, it takes you to a better dashboard. So if you have uploaded videos before and you've uploaded them to Screencast-O-Matic servers, that's what you would see here, is all of your videos that you have saved to their online server. There's also a few ways to organize it. So for your own purposes, you can organize your videos into folders to keep things together. And then if you're going to just showcase things to students directly from this server, you could organize them into channels. So for math and chemistry, you may have subject-specific ones, or you may want to break that down even more specifically into like subtopics, depending on what units you're teaching. So there's ways to do that here. And then when you're in the screen, whether it's from the previous screen or from this screen, to get this up and running, once you've got the software installed, all you have to do is click Launch Recorder. So it tells me at the bottom that it's loading, and then it gives you this little pop-up in your browser that checks for privacy issues. Is it cool that I launched this? That's always nice to see from software, that it doesn't just automatically launch something on you. So it is in the process of launching, probably taking a bit of a second here. Can you still hear my audio? It has changed now that I've opened this.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, fabulous. Thank you. Anytime you open something that draws on your microphone, it sometimes changes how you can hear yourself. So I wasn't sure if I had disappeared. So once you've launched the little recorder, this is what pops up on your monitor here. It's a little more detailed and a little more customizable than what you get with PowerPoint. So basically what you've got here is, the big thing here is a frame. So in PowerPoint, where you were able to just click and drag over where you wanted to record, you have a little bit more flexibility. So you can just adjust these handles to record what it is you want to record. So say you wanted to record just a small little piece of information, maybe a teeny tiny little video of something that was on your screen, you have a little bit more flexibility in changing the size of what you're recording. And then it automatically pops up this fun little settings screen for you, which is great. So you have a couple of options here. If you don't wish to record your webcam, obviously you can just record your screen. You do have the option of recording your webcam only, which this is going to be fabulous, I'm sure. Yeah. And then you have the option, which I typically use, to record both. And the reason I like this option here is obviously, again, it's that visual teacher presence while you're recording your videos, but you also have the option as you're recording to change how your webcam is positioned. So right now it's on its default, which is this little picture-in-picture down in the bottom right-hand corner. So your students can see whatever it is you're working through on your main screen, but they can also see you down in the bottom corner. But if for some reason at some point in the recording, you wanted to make your video bigger so they would focus on just you, you're able to switch that. I don't think I can mess around with that right now because my webcam is being used elsewhere, but you can switch in and out of that as well. So you have some other parameters here in what you're presenting. So there's the time limit, which you can't change on a free account. You're limited up to 15 minutes. You don't need to reduce it or anything because it'll just record what it records. There's the size, obviously, which is what you have selected. But I believe if you had a particular ratio in mind, you could change that automatically. It shows you a little bit of a bar here indicating your volume on your microphone. So yeah, make sure green bars flash when you talk. If you don't see green bars, that suggests that maybe your mic isn't plugged in or you've got your mic muted or something like that. And then audio here is X'd out, obviously, because you can't do that in the free version. But that's pretty much okay for most people's teaching purposes. So very much like PowerPoint, when we are good to go, I'm going to switch over to a more interesting window because that's not particularly interesting. But when you're good to go, you can just hit that little teeny little record button in the bottom corner there. And again, it gives you a big old countdown so you can steel yourself for recording whatever it is you're going to record. So you can see while you're recording that, again, it gives you a preview of your webcam in the bottom corner here. You don't see mine because it's being used elsewhere. It gives you a little bit of a countdown so you can be cognizant of if you're coming up on that 15-minute mark. We talked a little bit earlier about having shorter videos and whatnot, so not as much of an issue. One thing I have noticed with ScreencastOMatic, and it's not doing it now, again, probably because I've got this other conferencing platform open, but typically it will highlight your mouse cursor for you, especially when you click on things. So it'll have a little circle around it there. But you can go ahead and you can record in this setting here. You can switch over to different resources if you're wanting to show off different things. You can, as in PowerPoint, pause your recording. You can scrub back. You can delete it in the middle if you want to. But this gives you time to switch things, to switch your camera should you want to. And then you can pick up recording again. So again, if you need to reconsider what you're speaking about, change resources, add little things in, you can pause and start re-recording again.
Jennifer, is there an editing tool within this? So you're saying you can go back. Is there some pretty good editing?
Well, we'll get to that.
Oh, okay, sorry.
No, that's okay. We'll get to that in the sense of I haven't used it because it wasn't available to free accounts before, but now there is one and you have a trial for it. So there is some editing that you can do, and I'll show you that here after. So once we're done recording, I forgot to mention you can actually move this too. So if you wanted to switch it over to your other monitor, if you're a 2-monitor person, you can move that as you need to. But when you're all done, you just click this done button here and it tells you what you wanted. It asks you what you want to do next. So do you want to look for options to save it? Do you want to just quick share it? So it's a one quick upload somewhere. And it'll dump it automatically on your Screencastify dashboard that we saw earlier. And then there's the option to edit. So it says edit this recording in the video editor. So you'll see here, unlock it. So we don't have the premium account. I think if I hit upgrade now, maybe not, we'll see. Yeah, if you purchase, then we'll upgrade right away. So it may not give you that option. I think to get into the editor on the free account, what you need to do is upload it to your Screencastify account and then actually go in your dashboard here and open the editor that way, because that's where you can start your 30-day trial. So yes, there are video editing options, but you'll have to tinker with those, and maybe you'll choose to do that when we kind of break out here to get you to try it yourself. So before you do that, this is what it looks like after you finish recording and you've clicked ahead. You've got a couple of options here. So you can just say, yep, perfect, whatever, I'm good, and save it as a video file to your computer. Again, it will save as an MP4 like the PowerPoint did, and you can automatically go and upload it somewhere. You can upload it to the ScreencastOMatic dashboard, or you can link a YouTube channel. So if you have a teacher or a class YouTube channel, you can set to automatically upload to YouTube from here. If you haven't uploaded to YouTube previously, it is not a fast process, so it does take some time. So usually what I like to do is save it as a video file to my computer. I can do whatever tinkering I want to in my own editing software, be it something like Movie Maker, Windows Movie Maker, or iMovie, depending on what platform you're using. And then I tend to upload my stuff to YouTube overnight so I can go to bed and not worry about my internet speed being tanked, because we've got like 5 megabyte upload speed and it's not great. And I imagine most of us are in the same predicament now that we don't have institution-based internet. So I would typically save this as a video file and move on from there. Like I said before, if you want to get fancy, you can add some music. They do have some free options here that you can add background music onto your file if you would like. I do encourage you to try that when you're playing around with it in a couple minutes. You can also add captions, which is really great. However, these are also limited in the free version. You have to just add a file if you want to do that. So there's a text file, there's different caption-based files. I tend not to do this, again, because I upload my videos to YouTube. I just use the captions that they have on YouTube. Depending on where you're uploading, there are different options, I think, for adding captions as well. Like I know Microsoft SharePoint, I believe it's called, has options for adding captions and that sort of thing. So I haven't used these before, but you may choose to mess around with it and see. I tend to use other captions. And then from there, we just save it. Yeah, so you can actually you can change the type of your file. I'd stick with MP4. It's typical, it's recognized everywhere. Change your file name, change where you're recording to, whether or not you wanted your cursor highlighted, and then publish, i.e. save. Oh, I haven't chosen where I'm going to save it. But that's all there is to using ScreencastOMatic. Again, I will pause. As we can see here, as I'm pausing, this one's taking a little bit longer to publish. Katina asked earlier about file size with PowerPoint. ScreencastOMatic tends to be a little bit higher quality, particularly if you are using your webcam, obviously, because it is recording that source as well. So these files are going to be bigger. They're going to take longer to upload places and that sort of thing. So that is something to keep in mind, is upload time on your end. But before we get into giving you guys a chance to tinker with it, I do want to pause again and see if there are any questions so far. Fabulous. We're also agreeable. That's sometimes the strange thing when you're presenting online, is you never know if you're just talking to yourself or not. But people tend to be a lot more agreeable online. So sometimes that's better for classroom management on your end if you are doing synchronous stuff. So I do want to give you an opportunity, if you would like to now. Like I mentioned, it is something you have to create an account for and download the plugin. I do want to encourage you to do that, as we can kind of troubleshoot problems. But obviously, if that's not something you want to do at this time, feel free to, we can just hang out and chat about options and that sort of thing. But my recommendation is to give it a try and see how it feels. See if you run into any issues. If there are any questions along the way, let us know. So I will give you, we'll say another 10 or so minutes to tinker with that, and then we're going to come back together before we move back to the main room to consolidate. So if you'd like to do that now, go ahead, and if you have the slides open, you can click on this link to get straight to ScreencastOMatic. And yeah, feel free to chat and share thoughts and ideas as you're playing. And I will touch base with you in a few minutes to come back together. Yeah, so just as you're all tinkering with ScreencastOMatic here, I started looking into their editor. It looks like if you're on the content page or the beta view, the editor link is broken. But if you switch back to the classic view, you can get into it there. The editor that's built in from someone who edits quite a lot of videos is not great from what I can see. You have, some more pretty much the same options for cropping your video and for music. However, if you're using the free trial and you edit it with the editor, you get this giant watermark across your thing. So I would say it's probably not even worth it based on what I can see here, and that you're better off, if you want to do some editing, to take your video into either Movie Maker or iMovie, depending on your operating system, and making the edits there. But honestly, for classroom-based videos, especially in this first little bit where we're getting our feet wet basically and getting settled, you may not want to do any editing at all. All right, so if you're still tinkering, try to kind of wrap up what you're playing with for the moment. You do still have these slides, so we can tinker further in the future, and I've included those diagrams in there as well, in case you're trying one of these later and you're not sure exactly what each thing does. You can use for a reference later to play around. But I know we're going to get ready to move back into the main meeting to kind of debrief together in a few minutes. So if we want to come back together, and I'm just curious to hear your thoughts for those of you who are able to try one or the other or both. Or even if you've experimented with other stuff in the past. I know Vic was talking about using Camtasia. What did you think about these tools, or do you have experience with a tool that maybe, feels a little bit better, a little bit smoother for your purposes? And I'd also be curious to hear, and I think maybe others as well, certain things that you might be able to see yourself using this sort of thing for. Obviously, screen capturing your lessons, but are there any other ways maybe that you might find useful to make videos for your students? Feel free to chat or mic, whichever your preference is.
Hi, Jennifer. It's Vic again.
Hey.
Yeah, thank you so much for this. I really appreciate going over these two tools in particular, and I agree. Camtasia is another one that everyone should, if you have access to it through the board, definitely give it a good look. It's great. This is a great way of chunking, I think, a lot of our lessons into bite-sized components that can be accessed as a video, perhaps with narration, captioning, again, as for accessibility and so on. But it's, and that's, again, another piece that I think everyone should be cognitive or looking at is captioning. YouTube has some ability to caption videos, and I used that with ScreencastOMatic and Camtasia created videos, and to relatively high degree of accuracy. So I was pleased enough. But if anyone knows of any other abilities or captioning software, I'd be curious to know more.
Yeah, and that's something we only even glazed over here. So when we are thinking about accessibility, captioning is huge. I know when whether I'm creating or selecting videos to use with students, I always look for ones that have pretty accurate captions. One interesting thing you could choose to do is if you were making videos, you could have a rotating role for students as a captioner. So you have the ability to add captions manually to YouTube videos. So you could give students on a rotating basis kind of that role or that task of captioning in the video. And then you also have that added knowledge that, at very least one or two of them, whoever are working on it, they're getting kind of a even deeper sense of what you're teaching. And I've even had some students opt to do that in the past because they're like, I need to engage more with this content in a way. So not only have they been able to help their classmates in that way, but it also helps them engage with the content. Yeah, there's a bunch of other options for that too, depending on where you want to upload. So Microsoft has a pretty good built-in captioner as well in their suite if you do have Office 365. Flipgrid, yeah, I haven't used their immersive reader, but I do know that they have one. So there's a ton of other platforms that do have awesome captioning, but that is something that we need to be cognizant of for people who may have audiovisual issues in that way. And that could very well be a detriment as we work towards online learning as well. Thanks, Vic. That's awesome. Diana asked, how about students using ScreencastOMatic? Would you use that as an option? Yeah, totally. I mean, I know I would. Has anyone done this before? Had their students create their own video content? So we're talking about creating their own, but does anyone have any experience with that sort of thing? While you're thinking, I'll just kind of share my own experience with this. Like Jeanette mentioned, using websites and things as an online portfolio. Yeah, you could absolutely have students do screen capturing as a good way to reflect their own process. So we do this with younger students too. We call it pedagogical documentation or procedural documentation, where if they're showing us their finished product, the younger students will actually take an iPod, for instance, and record and speak to what they made, what they see, what they learned, that sort of thing. So you could absolutely do this for students as a reflective process, reflecting on their learning, and then they can submit that to you. Also, again, has the added benefit of saving you reading tons and tons of text-based journals. But if they're willing to share that with their peers too, you have that added collaborative aspect as well. So yeah, students creating their own videos and having somewhere, be it Google Classroom or what have you, as a reception point, that's awesome. And yeah, Vic mentioned using Flipgrid for that too. Flipgrid is fantastic for reflective processes like that, having students just record their own thoughts and giving them the ability to give feedback on other people. So if Flipgrid isn't something you've used before, that might be something you want to check out as you become kind of comfortable with this whole online learning process, because it really is fabulous and they're constantly making updates to make it more accessible and secure too. They're making a lot of really good security and privacy updates too. Okay, so we're going to move back into the main meeting in a second. I'm going to give you that link, but I just want to point out this last slide here too that you might want to look at later on if you have some more time and you're kind of curious about other options. So these are some other options for recording, and I've kind of included 3 that are on the spectrum of easy to more difficult. Like Vic has been mentioning Camtasia. I have experience with Camtasia as well. I absolutely love it. Unfortunately, I can't get access to it because I don't have a licensed computer through my university. However, if this is something you do have access to through your board's tech department, I absolutely recommend checking it out. They give you tons of easy ways to do screen recording, green screening. If, say, you wanted to green screen out your background but still have your face visible, gives you a little more privacy. They also let you add some more kind of content management and customizability. So you can add captions at the bottom. You can add, screens between content if you want to have that natural division. Really awesome tool. If you have an iPad, if you're an Apple user, TouchCast Studio is very similar to Camtasia in the affordances that it has. So I would recommend checking that out as well if you want to add a little more zhuzh to your videos. And then OBS, Open Broadcaster Software. If you are extremely, extremely tech comfortable and competent, that is something that gives you a lot of flexibility and agency over your video content. But if you're not that high-end tech user, I wouldn't recommend checking it out at this point because it is not user-friendly in the interface. Even just clicking into their website, you'll kind of see that. But if you are someone who's on the upper end of tech comfort, feel free to check it out. But if you have access to, the options we use today or some of these other options, I would recommend those as well, as you have time, of course, because this is going to be a transition for all of us.